Hey guys, I'm Richard Fitzgerald. This is Dubai Works, where we interview the business leaders making a difference in this great city.
That business with scalability was very interesting to me.
I like building something that has legacy.
Good morning, Gary.
Good morning, how are you?
Very good. So thanks for joining Dubai Works firstly. How I would describe you as a true Dubai entrepreneur in terms of recognizing the city, recognizing the trends, coming up with something that fits this world that we're living in, digitization. You're a real entrepreneur in that you get involved in promoting the business online with a lot of video, a lot of content. And Switch just really suits you. Really understand Switch and the brand through you and what you've done over the last few years. So thanks a lot for coming on.
That's a great intro. Thank you very much.
Well, yeah, and just to start with that. So we've seen Switch born out of Dubai and then expand internationally. But what's the kind of background story? What's your background and how did you come up with the idea?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's probably a story we maybe don't tell enough of, but one that's obviously, like you say, rooted in Dubai. So actually, I moved over to Dubai in 2015. I had previously to Switch, I had a marketing business, and we did a lot of work with corporate clients and government clients over here. And in the services business, as you well know, Rich, it is a challenge. It is a real slog. And through that process, admittedly, personally, I reached burnout. And I think many entrepreneurs, have a trigger point in their life that sets them on a journey to create something that means something to them, something that has purpose. So I think I personally found purpose in that period of my life where I was maybe working too hard, trying to do too many things, and was guilty of not actually taking care of myself in the way that I always had done. So I've always been very active, always been into fitness, played football to a very high level, growing up and into, through university. So it was really kind of going back to my roots.
Just to kind of touch on something, because I think it's important, we'll talk a lot about wellness. What do you think burnout is for you? Do you think it kind of differs for different people? Is it a combination of, enough is enough, or is it more serious than that, or what would you describe that burnout feeling?
Horrible. So actually, the feeling is horrible. For me, it was more physical burnout. I think people can suffer it in many different ways. Emotional, psychological. Ultimately, it's triggered by stress, and some people deal with stress differently, right? Stress is not necessarily a bad thing, in my opinion, if you have the right amount of it. If the drivers of that stress are positive, actually it can fuel you. So, but when there's too much stress, I think that's when it becomes too much to handle. And I think most people recognize that too late. So that would be my definition of burnout is when you've recognized too late that you are, you're not able to, to continue in the way that you're going. So for me, it was lack of sleep. So I think, not sleeping enough, not giving my body the time it needs to recover and rest, and my brain as well, because ultimately as an entrepreneur, you're constantly using your brain, and whilst you go to the gym to train your body, I think many people are the victims of not giving their brain the time to recover or to train their brain in that process. So yeah, I think burnout happens in many different ways for different people. For me, it was unfortunately the first Valentine's Day after I had gotten married to my wife, and we couldn't even go out to dinner because I couldn't talk. I was so tired, I just couldn't speak. So I'd been toying with the idea of Switch for a while. My two co-founders as well, we'd been playing with the idea of what can we do. We actually launched, prior to developing the app and the platform, we ran a program at the beginning of 2017 called Switch 360. And it was a social media style campaign where we recruited 4 individuals from Dubai, 4 Dubai residents, to try something new every day for 12 weeks to showcase how variety really does drive well-being. And the guys who participated all saw really positive results, whether it was increase mental strength, whether it was improved relationships, whether it was career progression. We weren't really just focusing on how you can change your body by working out every day. That was not the goal. The goal was how can you build variety into your routine to drive well-being. And at the end of it, we had loads of great content. We really did succeed on a content creation and distribution perspective, but we only touched the lives of 4 people. So we're like, how do we take this and move it,
How do we scale
to the next phase?
Yeah,
exactly. The honest answer is we didn't know. It took us a while to figure it out. Couple that with burnout, because we were doing this on the side. We were still doing running our original business. Dilesh, one of the co-founders, and myself, and Graham, running their own businesses and doing, Graham doing his own job at the time. And we hadn't quite figured out. We'd done this really great campaign, but we wanted to scale it. So it took us a few months after that to actually figure out the right business model, create the right financial model. Luckily, we have a background of building business models and business plans and financial models for our clients previously through our design and marketing business. So it wasn't alien to us, but it was a good opportunity to get it right. And then for all the planning in the world that you can do, in the end, when you get going, it changes.
Interesting. So you were coming at a place where you kind of wanted to, you were burnt out, and then you wanted to create something new that creates extra pressure as well. So kind of, how did you get going? Was it like a lease of life that you were, free and you were kind of empowered and you were kind of, oh, this is taking a weight off my shoulders? Or was it immediately, oh no, I'm now doing 2 things at once?
Very good question. No, I think for me it was a realization that personally for me, I'd always been driven and motivated by running my own business, and I thought that was my motivation. But actually, when we developed the idea of Switch and the business model progressed, what I then realized was actually it was running this business that was my real passion and motivation. So I think by doing the wrong thing but not realizing it, it forced me into an opportunity to find the exact right thing. And not many people have the luxury of finding exactly what they're truly passionate about. And for me, whilst I came from a negative experience, so don't get me wrong, there was, I was very tired, I was exhausted, but there was no physical or mental health repercussions other than that. So I'm, coming out of that particular space and going into, creating a new business, a new venture that had the opportunity to impact many people. We didn't know how many people. We were like, well, can we do more than 4? I think the answer is yes. So yeah, I think finding that passion, yes, definitely it gives you a new lease of life without a doubt. But it was also an absolute cue or trigger for me to start to step away from, the existing business that we had. So that process wasn't immediate, but it was fairly swift. And then I went full time into Switch.
And there were people, you mentioned you're in the services industry and sort of working with clients and that side of things and branding and marketing. There are people who are in the health and wellness industry as well, who are in the services side of business, who don't necessarily scale it. So at what point did you kind of look at this? And I think there was a few figures you mentioned elsewhere that the UAE's exercise market had been around $380 million when you started, and the well-being market was $2.7 billion. Were they things that you looked at in terms of opportunity for this? And then did you realize then that you were going down a different type of a business model, an entrepreneur, and you were looking at kind of fundraising and scale? Was that part of the thought process at the time?
Yeah, 100%. I think, having built a services business, like you said before, where we were, I guess, lucky, maybe you want to call it luck, I don't know. We were lucky in the fact that our client base in our marketing business spanned the US, Europe, and the Middle East. So we scaled it, I guess, as far as it was possible. But yeah, it's a very different ball game. I think going into Switch, we had nothing more than an idea written down, and we were lucky to get some initial angel investors to put some seed money in. And I must admit that the raising seed capital here from individuals has been critical in our success. I can't thank those people enough. They are mostly based here in Dubai. They are, individual angel investors. We have had a lot of success with individual angel investors, and I think that network doesn't quite get the credit that it deserves. I think it's something that's very under the radar. I understand why. It's a personal thing. It's a private thing, but we would not be where we are today without those angel investors. So we have a great deal to thank them for, and I think we also probably are very grateful that we are in Dubai, where there's probably a higher concentration of individuals who get into angel investment.
Yeah.
But like I said, I think it probably doesn't get the credit or the exposure that it truly deserves.
So interesting. So talking about the business plan and model and it often changing, does the structure and ownership also adapt, or is that in terms of the international expansion, which we'll touch on a bit later, the original seed investors, are they the ownership structure, is that with the same kind of entity and the same framework as before, and the kind of almost legalities around that?
Yeah, I think that's definitely one of the challenges of setting up a business in general. Is figuring out a structure that works for now and for the future. Quite frankly, our structure's changed 3 times in probably 3 years as we grow and grow and grow. Every markets that we're in or entering have different regulations. We have to create a structure that's suitable to our investors and our partners. And as we now prepare to launch in the US as well, that's a whole different ball game. So yeah, you have to be. I think you have to be fluid, and you have to be able to adapt. Your everything, not just your structure, your operations, your mindset. Your physical operations. But I think the structure is vital in developing something that's compelling and attractive to investors. Because if you're building a business like ours that does require investment over time, you need to make sure that you are set up in the right way to give the investors what they want to a certain degree. That's the game, right?
Yeah, interesting. So from a seed point of view and the angel, that's kind of part of a roadmap then for a Series A, etc. And if you talk about that a little bit, but just kind of explain, when you're pitching a business idea, are you at some point, is there kind of an exit strategy, or is there kind of a goal in mind, or is it more related to a kind of an overall mission for the company?
Yeah, a bit of everything. I think ultimately, any investor, whether it's an angel investor at seed level or a venture investor at Series A, Series B level, they're of course looking for a return. I think as we grow and as we develop, that the exit becomes maybe bigger, maybe more sophisticated, maybe at a larger scale. And yeah, that's something that you have to of course map out. We have a very clear pathway to what our future growth looks like. Now, whether that's an exit strategy for our investors, whether that's an exit strategy for some of the investors or some of the team members or whatever, I think it varies. I think the good thing for us is that we see a very long pathway of growth, profitable growth in the wellness space. The wellness industry as a whole is growing astronomically. It's a multi-trillion-dollar industry if you put every piece of it together, from corporate wellness, health insurance, you name it. So yeah, we see a very good, solid runway to profitable growth. So our exit options actually increase as time goes on. And we're in a. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, we'll definitely move into. I want to talk about the kind of the reasons for Hong Kong and the expansion as well. But just while we're on this topic around Dubai and the business structure, do you think there's enough prototypes and enough examples? Because a lot of examples and a lot of say a stock market listing exit is very US centric. And then other kind of startups for this region might be acquired. But, do you kind of look at kind of carving out a new path? And could there be potential other listings on other stock markets, whether it's Asia, and I know you're looking at the US as well. So, where does that come into it? How do you look at the kind of the international roadmap for kind of exiting and kind of not even exiting, but just in terms of future capital fundraising and investment?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's not, the answer lies not in both fundraising and exit, but actually in the whole ecosystem. We have to get to a level here in Dubai or the Middle East where there are enough startups, there is enough funding, the whole journey has gone through, and embracing the notion of failure or pivoting, that has to evolve. And when we get there, that's when we can then start to have those exits or those listings. Unfortunately, whilst that doesn't exist here, that's why organizations will naturally be attracted to the US or other markets to kind of implement exit strategies. So I think that there's an ecosystem play that is happening. There's some great platforms, some great accelerators, incubators, stuff like that. But actually, I think it's more about the DNA of the city's entrepreneurial mindset that needs to continue to evolve and develop. And once that happens, that's when we will see more new businesses, more startups, more scale, and more champions of the city from an entrepreneurial perspective. There aren't enough, and I think we're guilty of that in that we are a Dubai-based tech startup operating in the wellness space, and we perhaps don't wave that flag enough or at all even. So I think that more organizations, more startups that are there need to make their voice heard, and then that you need that support from those exit pathways. So whether that's from DIFC or whether that's from the government or the banks, that support network is not there yet. There's a willingness, there is a way, but it's not there yet. So I think once we get there, and we're actually part of Dubai SME's ABRA program, where they effectively champion what we're doing to other markets around the world, and that's a phenomenal program that we've been involved with. So we have a lot to be grateful to them for. But it's still early days. I think that it would be phenomenal if we could continue to grow, and one of our exit options is to list here in Dubai or in the Middle East. But as it stands, it is more likely that it would be in either the US or Singapore.
Interesting. And can you disclose what you've raised so far and what the kind of future? Are you going to do a Series A soon or something like that?
Yeah, of course. So we, from angel investors and in our seed round, we raised just over $1.5 million US. And we're actually in the closing stages of a pre-Series A round where we're raising up to $3 million US. That will see us through our growth plans for this year. And then later this year, I would imagine, because the process takes time, fundraising is a full-time job. So whilst you said earlier, I had the danger of having two full-time jobs. I actually have two full-time jobs now. One is fundraising and one is being CEO of the business. So later this year, we'll kick off a Series A. And again, at the moment, most of the discussions that we've got in place are happening with VCs in the US and Hong Kong and Singapore.
Okay, interesting. A lot to talk about there. I think just so we don't go too far ahead of ourselves, the Switch platform and the kind of very catching logo kind of alludes to a brand and a switching of lifestyle. So what sort of are you looking at other apps and other platforms that did things? I'm thinking of ClassPass or Guava Pass. Are you incorporating a bit of that? And how has the product evolved in the last couple of years?
Another great question. I think we get asked about ClassPass somewhere between 5 and 10 times a day from different stakeholders. So there is an obvious comparison. Truth be told, we had no intention of trying to copy or mimic ClassPass or Guava Pass prior to them regionally. When we started back in 2017 with the Switch 360 campaign, like I said, we didn't really know what we were going to do afterwards. When we then developed the business model and the tech platform, we wanted to solve the problem as a starting point, particularly here in Dubai, of finding, booking, and paying for things to do is really difficult. So how can we help vendors reach more people, and how can we help people, discover more services? And if you find something you actually want to do, you can just book and pay for it there and then, and don't have to worry about the rest. So whilst the problem that we were solving originally with the tech platform was one that was a deeply rooted problem here in Dubai, particularly with cash payment still being, the go-to, the default payment mechanism, sending a WhatsApp or a having to call to make an appointment and then not being very sure if that appointment is confirmed or not. So we wanted to, I guess, professionalize or raise the bar of how operations exist in the leisure, fitness, and wellness space. So number one, the original differentiator from us and the likes of Guava Pass and Class Pass is that we are not fitness classes only. I think fitness classes make up maybe 10 to 15% of our total inventory in terms of the services on the platform. They're a very important part of it, but they're not the only offering. So you could book a paddleboard, a kayak, a kite surfing lesson. There's hot air ballooning. There's dune buggying in the desert. There's flotation therapy. There's life coaching, zip lining at Ras Al Khaimah and Torre Verde.
Wow.
There's so many different things, and the whole point about Switch, as you alluded to, is enabling people to try different things. There is no one way to well-being, and most people don't know their own ways to well-being. So our job is to inspire you and make it easy for you to try these things. Some people have never had a massage before. We want to make that easy and accessible to people. So I think from as we progressed and as we evolved, and we've been talking about pivoting and having the, maybe an agile mindset as an entrepreneur and as a business in order to succeed in today's climate in particular. When we started Switch and launched the first version of the app, it was very much consumer facing. Anyone in Dubai could download it, anyone in the world could download it and use it to find, book and pay for services on the go. Within weeks of launching the very first version of the app, we got contacted by several prominent organizations, both private and government, to say, how can we use your platform to deliver wellness benefits to our staff? And we were, our answer at the time was, we can't. It's not a B2B platform. We're a B2C brand, and then when you get asked time and time again, you have to start to think, well, hang on a minute, is this an opportunity? Have we got it wrong? How can we evolve our offering to satisfy this genuine demand? Because we are getting asked by some pretty good organizations to use the platform, but we hadn't thought about it in that way. So I think you have to be big enough to accept that all of the planning that we did actually would miss this golden opportunity, and we now need to adapt to it. So Dilesh and the development team went back to work. We built the platform to cater for organizations. And now, fast forward to today, we only work with organizations to deliver wellness benefits to their staff or customers.
Interesting. But you mentioned your partner on the development side. That was a crucial kind of part of Switch from the start, that you owned your own technology and you were kind of maybe onboarding vendors. So although it might have been a pivot, you still had the ability to kind of adjust from a platform and technology point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everybody sees the Switch app, but actually our biggest platform is the vendor and corporate portals that we've built. So the SaaS platforms that we've built for the vendors to upload inventory to the Switch app, to manage pricing, to create discounts and offers for corporate users, to create special exclusive events, to create private events. So, the Switch platform, from a vendor and corporate portal perspective, and the data that sits behind that, is fundamental to how our business operates. In terms of our vendor partnerships, they're critical. And I think that we've been very fortunate that, the vendors that we work with, our partners, they see that we're evolving to benefit them, right? And it's really important that they see us in that way. Without naming other platforms, I don't think that partnership or that relationship is seen in such favorable terms. So, what we do is designed to generate more revenue to our vendor partners that they wouldn't be able to tap into themselves. So we're not cannibalizing the consumer market that they're attacking by themselves and doing very well. Actually, we're helping them, attract corporate revenue dollars that they would just not have access to otherwise.
Interesting. Excuse me. So explain that from a vendor point of view. I set up a clinic or a service or a massage center or a gym, and as part of my business plan, am I thinking about software? Am I thinking about SaaS? Do I, we know that restaurants use delivery partners. Is that what entrepreneurs in the wellness space are thinking about? What's kind of available to them, and do they have decisions around building their own? Yeah, exactly. And how do you kind of onboard them onto your platform?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that from a software perspective, if you're a fitness studio owner or a spa or a salon owner or whatever, there's a number of great SaaS platforms out there to run your business. There's the likes of MindBody, GlowFox, ThinkFit on the fitness side of things. I could list 100, across the spectrum, and they all have their own merits. We're not directly competing with any one of them. So almost every single one of our vendors probably uses one or more of those platforms. Certainly, many of our fitness vendors also work with ClassPass and other fitness aggregators. Again, the major difference for us is how we can give them technology and how we can give them access to corporate revenue dollars and corporate users. And from a business model perspective, the amount of commission that we charge on in-app sales is way lower than many other platforms. And I think the critical missing piece is that within the Switch app, there's a digital wallet. So organizations can give their staff or their customers Switch credit to spend on any activity that they would like. Switch credit is a very simple conversion. One Switch credit is 1 dirham, or one Switch credit is 1 Hong Kong dollar. So it's 1 to 1. So if you have 100 Switch credits and there's an activity for 100 dirhams, you just use your Switch credit to pay for it. Now, not only are we giving the vendors access to corporate users and organizations they wouldn't have gotten otherwise, those users have prepaid accounts, right? So they've got credit in their account that they can spend on anything. So not only are we helping vendors do marketing to corporate users, we're also helping do the sales because, we're getting credit loaded into their digital wallets for them to spend on the app. So again, it really comes back down to being a partnership. We rely on our vendors to deliver the services. We as Switch deliver no services ourselves through the app. We need to make sure that our vendor network are engaged with us and want to deliver the services to our corporate users. And again, we're very grateful that the vendor partners that we have here in Dubai, in Hong Kong, they're doing a great job.
Interesting. And so how much of your kind of team or structure is built around technology as opposed to kind of the operations side, the sales and marketing? And we'll talk about the content and the video and the inspiration part that you do a lot of. Is it 50-50 or is it mostly kind of technology?
I would say it's close to 50-50. Yeah, I think, the tech team probably account for about 40% of our global headcount. And then, from the other portion of the team is linked to in-market operations or global operations.
Okay, and going back to the kind of corporate wellness, there was a statistic and another piece of coverage about Switch that said Bayut did the research and they found that 93.2% of people believe it's up to the employers as a responsibility to provide health, well-being and wellness to their employees. So that's kind of a real insight, and it kind of backs up a lot of the feedback you were getting. How do you think that's evolved? Are employers taking on that responsibility? Do they need to be kind of educated a bit more? And you mentioned, providing credits to those services. Do you also provide, for example, if we wanted to have massages in the office, or if we wanted to have a kind of a PT to come in to do some stretching and things like that, is that something we could do via the Switch platform? Very good point. So I think we've seen in the last 4 weeks the mobilization and virtualization of pretty much 100% of our services. So whilst the original goal was to get people active, in managing their well-being by doing activities or taking up services physically, we've now seen a fundamental shift to virtual service delivery. So Switch Live is something we're running with a number of our partners across a number of our corporate
clients to keep their workforce or their customers engaged, keep them active, even if it's at home. So, we're working now with a number of our vendors to deliver virtual services to corporate teams and corporate clients. But yes, absolutely. In terms of, working with our corporate clients in the more traditional way, it's helping them achieve their well-being, develop and achieve their well-being strategy in whatever ways work for them. So yeah, a number of our vendors have, a mobile capacity. So we have some massage providers on the app who can come to your office or your home to do a massage. We have PTs that are mobile that can come to your office or, take people off-site to do a group PT session. So yeah, absolutely. I think it's how we mobilize our vendor network to help them generate revenue in ways that in which they possibly couldn't do themselves. So that's very important. I think in terms of going back to your original statistic, what a great statistic that is, by the way. We have obviously seen a positive shift in many organizations' approach to corporate wellness and the importance that they're placing on the well-being of their employees. Whilst the last 4 weeks globally have been, a disaster in many ways, one of the best things to come out of this is a heightened sense of awareness around health, well-being, fitness, and I guess just overall hygiene, and all of that adds up to wellness. So I think it's no coincidence that we've had more discussions on a corporate level in the last 2 weeks alone than probably the last 2 years. So maybe we were gearing up to this, and this is just a positive trigger. I'd love to say that we were planning for that, but we weren't. We're just now able to adapt and have mobilize a really great vendor network, leverage the technology that we have, and importantly, work with organizations like Cigna, like Standard Chartered, global organizations that actually want to really take care of their employees or their customers at a time when physical activity is no longer possible.
What's the partnership with Standard Chartered? How has that come about? Is that something bespoke between Switch and Standard Chartered?
Yeah, something we've been working on for a while now, and fortunately, it's now starting to come to light. So again, one of the things we're working on is a live program for their employees globally. So leveraging our vendor network, not just in the markets we're already in, but also the markets we were preparing to launch in. And it may well be now that we launch in those markets virtually first, rather than digitally and physically. So delivering only live services rather than aggregating physical services too. So actually, this has become a big opportunity for us, in the last 4 weeks. With Standard Chartered, we have a partnership where we're developing a unique concept called Fusebox. So we will open the first Fusebox studio here in Dubai in Emaar Square at the foot of Standard Chartered Tower in the summer. So building work has already started. It's not progressing quite as quickly at the moment due to the current circumstances, but we're still on track for a summer launch. The idea of the Fusebox Studios is that it's a live wellness space. What does that mean? It means that effectively that space is a physical version of our app, meaning that there is not one dedicated service deliverer. It's not a fitness studio. It's not a yoga studio. It's not a wellness studio. It is a physical platform for all of our vendors to come in and deliver services to Standard Chartered employees, Standard Chartered customers, or the general public. So all of the activities that take place at Fusebox will be exclusively available on the Switch app. And again, many of the customers, employees that have the app have prepaid either Switch credit or session credits that they can redeem at the Fusebox studio. So we know that, coming out of this current pandemic, that many of the partners that we work with will be in a difficult position. Maybe operating a studio is no longer a possibility. It's too expensive. Maybe there's new, vendors that want to come into the market but can't take the risk of the capex and opex associated with running their own studio. Not to mention that most studios operate maybe 3 to 5 peak hours a day, and then the rest is not just off peak, but it's dead. So it's really having a look at how we operate a multi-format space, almost like a studio within a studio, that molds to the vendor's brand. So if we're working with partners like KO8 or Hitbox or other vendors, if they come in, it's branded in KO8. If it's a Hitbox session, it's branded Hitbox, and making sure that the environment is a branded experience, but it's not one that has to be owned and operated at a really high capital, capex and opex to the vendor.
Interesting. So you've touched on kind of a lot of trends there in sort of evolution of many industries, and I was drawing comparisons with, while you were talking with, what we see in the food industry as dark kitchens, or what we see in the remote working as co-working spaces. So there's a lot of kind of things happening under your platform. Talking about how the decision to expand to Hong Kong came about, and then with other expansion, how do you know, what market research do you do, and which product do you kind of launch with at the start, or how do you go about that?
Very good question. So I think that as you mentioned, we're fortunate that we sit at a number of cross sections of a number of industries. So we get a lot of data from our own platform. We get the benefit of a lot of research from many organizations and institutions around the world, and we can take those trends and actually convert them into growth and revenue opportunities for our vendors, and wellness opportunities for our corporate partners. So we're in a nice position where we can match supply and demand in an agile way. So whether that's done virtually, whether that's done digitally, or whether that's done physically, to us doesn't really matter, as long as wellness benefits are being met from both sides. So in terms of going to Hong Kong, early last year, we were over there because we were exploring the market anyway. 6 months prior to that, we had been invited to Rise Tech Conference to promote both the Dubai startup ecosystem and what we're doing. And we were just blown away by the market, how densely populated it was, how rich it was in vendors, but also in Hong Kong, everything is stacked up. So nothing's on ground level, everything's on the 16th floor or the 30th floor, and you would have no way of finding these things. So, we already saw that, right, the same problem exists here as it does in Dubai. Just everything in Dubai is spread out.
Discovery,
in Hong Kong, it's all stacked up. We should look at Hong Kong as a market and take it a little bit more seriously. So you're on a discovery trip. I got introduced through a contact here in Dubai to the CEO of Cigna in Hong Kong. He set up a coffee. Within 10 minutes of meeting and starting the discussions, he was like, how quickly can you develop this in Hong Kong? We want to back it. So we were very lucky. We have a lot to thank Yuman for, the Cigna Hong Kong CEO, for just seeing what we were trying to do and matching that with their, Cigna's vision to help people and live healthier lives, and us helping people to live more active lives. The two things went together very well. So we signed a 3-year partnership with Cigna, and they, effectively they wanted us to develop the platform in Hong Kong so they could roll it out, one, to their staff, but very importantly to their 100,000 customers in Hong Kong.
Is that a strategic investment for them, or is it a sponsorship sort of program for a few years?
It's a strategic partnership. It's not investment as such, but they helped us get set up in Hong Kong through the partnership, through the agreement that we structured, and it's about mutual value creation. So we're giving them a differentiator in a very hotly contested health and medical insurance market, with a product that doesn't exist out there. And a partnership that certainly doesn't exist in the health insurance space.
And is that for Cigna customers? And are you looking at acquiring the same type of vendors that you do in the UAE, also in Hong Kong? Yes.
So we've actually been live now in Hong Kong since July. So I think the vendor network is growing as strong as it is in Dubai. The team led by Iris over in Hong Kong are doing a great job. And again, I think we're lucky in the sense that we have great partnerships in the likes of Cigna and Standard Chartered and CBRE also, that give us a foundation to grow from. So we're not a consumer-facing business in that we don't actually spend any marketing dollars to acquire users of the app. So we're quite a rare technology business in that respect. So as a Cigna customer, for example, you get Switch Plus, which is our premium tier on the app, which gives you discounts across services, exclusive events, private content, etc. So you get that as a Signa customer. And Signa also give many of their customers Switch credit to spend on the app as part of their health insurance policy.
Interesting. And so, that's very much a corporate sort of partnership in Hong Kong. Is that similar to how you're going to approach the US market? Or does it depend on the kind of need and want in that market?
Yeah, so our growth strategy is centered around what we call a pull market strategy, meaning that we are not going to invest dollars into going into a market and figuring it out. What we will do is when we have a predetermined or pre-agreed corporate demand, we will then go and acquire the necessary vendor network or supply side that's required to launch. And we get going with a stabilized base, meaning we have, a corporate or multiple corporate contracts locked in, which represent, in most instances, many thousands of corporate users, most of whom have paid credit, with a vendor network that's ready to tap into that demand. So, going into a market and acquiring vendor partners is not particularly difficult when we've built the demand side already with prepaid credit.
Smart. Okay, amazing. Are there other markets that you're looking at as well as the US? Or as when the demand comes, sorry.
Yeah. So we're actually in the late stages of setup in Singapore. So Singapore will be our next market due to the partnerships I've already mentioned. And then we're working on Los Angeles as the next market.
Wow. Big city, Los Angeles. Interesting. So talking about the kind of inspirational side of Switch, and, you can see a lot of your background coming through in the kind of branding and the video part of it, because it's a very visual platform. How do you kind of enhance the offerings of the vendors, and how do you go about creating that content? And are you, in a way, a kind of a content company as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think content is so key to everything nowadays that you just cannot ignore it. And I know I'm, preaching to the congregation in that respect here. So yeah, I think, we took a very proactive, positive stance on content from the get-go. Every service on the app has video content that showcases the facility, the service, the instructor, the location, the environment, the type of people that also, go to that vendor. So we were always a firm believer in video content. The demand for video content has just grown and grown since, we launched Switch. And not just on the app, but also through other platforms. So you mentioned earlier in terms of, we do create a lot of content to promote the brand and the team. We do a weekly vlog called Switch Weekly, just to give a bit of an insight into how things are going at the business and try and just tell the truth. Because I think it's very easy for brands to create glossy content that makes everything look rosy, but it's not easy running a business. It's not easy growing a platform like ours and developing technology, and things do go wrong. We're not afraid to say that. We're actually launching this week Switch Weekly today, and 4 weeks ago we introduced a segment called Real Talk, where we just try and tell you something that's really honest from the business. And little did we know that the Real Talk segment would become so real, and so challenging over the following 4 weeks. So I think content's hugely important. It's important to give ourselves an authentic and original, not just voice, but appearance as well. But like you say, help not just our vendors, but also our corporates tell the story of their brands and their offerings, and how we're just helping people to live more active lifestyles.
Yeah, and that sort of real talk and authenticity seems to be part of your values and what you stand for as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you mentioned our brand experience and obviously values and purpose, sit at the core of that. And, we have 5 core values that we live by at Switch. And one of them is to be open, honest, and direct at all times. And we make sure that we convey that internally, but also externally too.
What are the rest of the values?
Play to win, be open, honest, and direct. Be a sportsman. So yes, whilst winning is important, actually, helping others is critical. And the final one is be entrepreneurial, be agile. You know, we want people to be able to think and adapt accordingly. You know, so you know, it's about creating that environment where people can really be themselves. You know, they can drive the business forward. You know, and really grow our network and our ecosystem.
I think we could have had all this conversation around the impacts of coronavirus. So I know we touched on it in remote working and in different ways, especially with the corporate side. But I consciously, you know, I think there'll be a lot of conversation around it. But just in terms of the entrepreneurship side of coronavirus and kind of that last value you mentioned, how have Switch adapted in the last few weeks, both in terms of your offering and just in terms of how you see the behavioural changes happening around us?
Yeah, I think you know, first of all, we're lucky that we've got a great team who, you know, are committed to our mission of you know, helping people to live more active lifestyles. And I think that even before coronavirus, we were very dynamic and agile in the way we operated. I think this has just further accelerated that approach and that working style. So we're very grateful and thankful for the team, you know, and their approach to this challenge. There's been some great ideas. We've pivoted to a number of new service lines like virtual content and on-demand content that previously was not really much of our business model. You know, making sure that we keep our corporate clients engaged, work with our vendor partners to see what support we can generate. Ultimately, it's our responsibility to continue to drive value into the ecosystem, sitting in between the corporate partners and the vendor partners. So yeah, ultimately now everybody globally within our teams are working from home. We do daily video stand-up, so everybody jumps on a call at 10 o'clock. We share everything that we're working on. We have maybe a trivia question, and critically, living and breathing our brand by example. We also do Switch live sessions. So whether it's a fitness class or a yoga session or whatever. So you know, we do that as a team as well. So you know, what we're delivering to our clients and our customers, we make sure we do as well. We have to you know, deliver what we're offering from the inside out.
Interesting. And in terms of the kind of next steps for your business in line with the impact of COVID-19, you know, people are comparing this with the aftermath of the dot-com bubble and also, say, 9/11 and 2008. Do you think that appetite for investment and kind of VC investment is going to change? And also, if so, you know, will your positioning and will your pitch per se be geared more towards this sort of remote working and digital environment that we seem to be accelerated towards?
Yeah, so I think ultimately the whole global economy will shift, right? I don't think anyone knows particularly in which direction or how long for, but what we do know is that everything has changed. So I don't think you can be you can't be stagnant. You can't stay the same. You have to adapt. You have to be agile to the current economic climate, the current local climate, you know, and adapt accordingly. So you know, like I said, for us, yes, it is about introducing more live content, virtual content. Will it change our overall business model? No. You know, ultimately, we're a platform that connects organizations and their staff or customers with the providers of wellness services. So it doesn't really matter to us whether that's physical or digital. What does matter to us is that we continue to impact as many people and as many lives as possible. Will it impact fundraising? Yes, I think it will. I think VCs and investors will be perhaps a little bit more cautious in the coming quarters, hopefully not too longer than that. But I also think it will help flush out a lot of the business models that have no clear pathway to profitability or any pathway to actually generating any revenue. So I think they're the businesses that will struggle to raise money in the future more so than businesses like ours, where we're already revenue generative. We're already on a pathway to profitability. So, you know, I think that will actually help us because, you know, we're delivering a service that is now desired by more people than ever before. And we can now do it in a global way.
Amazing. On that note, we'll finish up. A good strong way to finish. And thank you for taking the time to tell us about Switch, how it started. And, you know, it's great to see a company grow out of Dubai and, you know, adapt the way that you're doing. So well done. And hopefully we'll continue to follow your story.
Thank you, Rich. I appreciate it. And thank you for inviting me to be on today.
Okay, take care. Speak soon. Hey guys, I'm Richard Fitzgerald. This is Dubai Works, where we interview the business leaders making a difference in this great city.
That business with scalability was very interesting to me.
I like building something that has legacy.